Hey everybody, Foley here for the weekly news recap, the 6th to the 12th of January 2025. So, this week, most of the video game developers are back to work and starting to show off some more of their things here. So this is Deficit. This is an announcement trailer for a PC game coming up soon. This is from the people behind Persist, I think it's called. I'm not sure. Anyway, Deficit sees you playing this sort of corporate espionage type person some stage in the future. You are being tasked to go into Hadrian's Wall, which is this maze of like scientific laboratories and experimental places and stuff like that, and you're trying to steal something. So the gameplay wise, it's kind of a mix of, it's got a little bit of Deus Ex in it, it's got a little bit of Dishonored, stealthy kind of gameplay. Combat-wise, they on their blurb about the game, they're thinking to go for something that's more close quarters, a bit more like stressful combat. So you're not like sniping people from all the way across the map. It's like more melee focused or small arms and stuff like that. It's an interesting idea. It's an interesting concept. I definitely have a lot of room in my gameplay time for Deus Ex inspired things, so if I can get any more of that going, that'd be good. You can also see it's got some sort of metaphysical paranormal shit going on too. Anyway, that's Deficit. It's only wishlisting now. There's no release date or anything like that, so keep an eye on that one. Then we have Locator. So this is like fairly early gameplay of Locator. This isn't even like officially a video. It's an unlisted video on YouTube. But Locator is essentially GeoGuessr plus Return of the Obra Dinn a little bit. So it's GeoGuessr in that you're being given this picture and a map, and you're trying to figure out where exactly on the map these locations are. Kind of Return of the Obra Dinn or Curse of the Golden Idol, Rise of the Golden Idol. It's like a deduction kind of thing. So you're trying to follow the trail of some archaeologist. The only thing you have from them are their like photo journal. And you're essentially trying to figure out where they are now, starting from like the first journal piece, pretty much. So you put down a couple of different map pins, and if 3 of them are correct, it will reveal that they're correct. Basically, you're kind of guessing. That's very much Return of the Obra Dinn's gameplay. It won't tell you if you're right with 1. It'll tell you if you're right in batches of 3, just to sort of stop you from just randomly guessing things. Anyway, it's an interesting idea. I really like the deduction style puzzle games. And this is kind of a new-ish idea. Obviously, GeoGuessr has been around for a very long time, but bringing it to, not the real world has makes it kind of interesting. Anyway, we'll see about this one. This hasn't even technically been officially announced yet, so I'm not even sure if it has a Steam page, to be honest. But anyway, that's Locator. The Deadly Path is sort of a mixture of Dungeon Keeper and Cultist Simulator in a way. So you've got this large grid of tokens, I suppose. You can consider them cards like Cultist Simulator, and you're building out your dungeon based on that. And some of the cards you will uncover are just empty spots. You can put whatever you want there, but sometimes you'll uncover entrances to your dungeon, which means enemies are going to start coming in and attacking you. So it's very Dungeon Keeper style thing. So it's a bit of a resource management, building out your dungeon, making sure you have enough money, making sure you have enough food to feed your henchmen and so on, while also repelling enemies from attacking you and so on and so forth. So yeah, EA is content to do nothing with Dungeon Keeper except make that awful, really awful app. And nobody else is really taking any attempts to do the Dungeon Keeper thing for a good while now, so this is kind of the best you're going to get, I suppose. Anyway, as The Darkest Path, I think it's also just in the wishlist stage right now. And then Tyrant's Realm. So Tyrant's Realm is like Dark Souls if it was on the PS2, more or less. That's what it's going for anyway. It's got the same kind of labored animations that the Dark Souls games tend to have. It's got a bit of a roguelike thing going for it, but it also has the sort of sensibilities of older, like PS1, PS2 games. I'm getting a lot of Nightmare Creatures from it. That's like a real vibe. And like, Nightmare Creatures was a PS1 game. If you go back and look at Nightmare Creatures and just kind of squint a little bit, you'll go, hey, that's just Bloodborne, really. But anyway, Tyrant's Realm, again, it's just in the wishlist stage. We don't have a prospective release date or anything like that. Some things that are a little bit more concrete. So, Ryu Ga Gotoku Studios had a Dragon Direct earlier this week, which is where they're kind of going all in on what's coming out next for the studio. So, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii is obviously their next thing, which is a bonkers idea, but is apparently canon. And this presentation just went into a lot of the different gameplay that you can see for the games. It's like a 13-minute video. It's pretty decent chunks of the game. Some stuff we've seen before in different trailers, but they go into like what Majima's different fighting styles are going to be and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, as you can see, it is not the kind of turn-based things that the main line Like a Dragon games have started being. There's 2 games of it now. It is real-time combat like the older Yakuza games. And that kind of makes sense for Majima since he comes from those games. It would make sense for them to stick with the real-time thing. And it also gives people who are, Yakuza fans, and they're fans because of the real-time combat. It gives them a game to play, I suppose. Anyway, fairly lengthy video there if you were interested. During CES, Sega also put out this kind of Virtua Fighter concept thing. So at the Game Awards, it was a very quick thing to say, hey, Virtua Fighter's coming back. And this is sort of a pre-viz, pre-development look at what they're going for. So the game isn't necessarily going to look like this, but this is kind of what they're going for. Very realistic, but with some like outsized proportions on the characters, but a very minimal HUD, keeping things very basic. And that's Virtua Fighter at its core, really. It was never one for like flashy combos and EX moves and like super ultra finishes and stuff like that. That's really like Street Fighter. Mortal Kombat was obviously more for gore. Tekken kind of started out as more of a technical kind of game, but has since sort of turned into more of a juggling type thing instead. It's like, how long can you keep this combo going more than anything else? So Virtua Fighter does have a niche there, where it's like a very technical fighting game. So yeah, they do have a slot to fill in there because Tekken has sort of branched out from what it used to be. Anyway, moving on. Carmen Sandiego's next game, I forget, I think it's just called Carmen Sandiego. But it has the pre-orders are up, but more importantly, it has a release date, which is 4th of March. I'm not entirely sure what to think of the game because it's by Gameloft, and Gameloft are more typically known for their mobile games, and to be clear, this is also a mobile game. It can be played on console and PC as well, but it is also available on mobile phones and what have you. Anyway, but I kind of just like the idea and the concept of Carmen Sandiego in general, so I'm giving it a little bit of slack, but do keep in mind this is Gameloft are a not particularly great mobile developer, so we'll see how things go for them, I guess, and see how it works out. We'll see on March. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so you may already know this, but just like a PSA for people who may not know yet. Elden Ring Night Reigns network test signups are now open. So they opened on the 10th of January. It's now the 12th. They close on the 20th, so you have about 10 days, less than that now. You have about a week to get yourself into that network test if you are interested. The site is crashing, so there is a lot of interest in it. I haven't been able to sign up yet. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that it is strictly only for PlayStation and Xbox. PC is not involved in the network test for some weird reason. I don't know why. Maybe they don't. Well, I kind of do know why, because From Software have had issues with PC online multiplayer in the past. One of the Dark Souls has had to be taken down because of it, and there's an exploit that's still, I think it's still kind of in there. they've done their best to mitigate it, but I think it is still exploitable in some ways. So I get why they're doing that, and it's possible that whatever networking code they're using for the network test maybe still has that exploited in there. But anyway, so you can sign up until 20th of January, and then the network test itself starts on the 14th of February, runs to the 17th, so starts on Valentine's Day. I somehow suspect people who are trying to get into the Elden Ring Night Rain network test probably won't have an issue with it being on Valentine's Day. Anyway, moving on. AI Limit pre-orders are now available as well, and there is a demo. So we had a look at AI Limit a while ago. The demo is now on Steam and PlayStation if you want to check it out yourselves. AI Limit, if you have forgotten, is kind of an anime Dark Souls-like thing. So you could think like Code Vein, I suppose, anime Dark Souls. It has nothing to do with the Code Vein people. I think Code Vein is now Bandai Namco. It's with the China Hero Project, but the China Hero Project's just like a publisher. It's not the developer. I forget the name of the developer. Anyway, it's Anime Souls, or Anime Bloodborne, whatever way you want to look at it. I have the demo downloaded. I have not yet had a chance to play it. So if it's an interesting enough demo, I might record it and put it up on the YouTube channel if you're interested. Anyway, moving on. Another game getting a demo. The demo isn't available just yet. So the first Berserker Kazan is another Soulsy type thing. It's also a little bit anime Soulsy as well. A demo is on the way. It's not available yet. 16th of January, so some stage this week, next week. Demo will be available for that. PC, PS5, and Xbox. There's no expiry date on the demo. Some demos, it's kind of been a bit strange that it's really the last couple of years or so that demos are taken down once the game is out, which is not the smartest move, in my opinion. You really should keep it up, because people are going to hear about your game when it's released. And they're going to want to check it out, but if they see, like, the only way to check it out is a big price tag instead of a demo... Anyway, the game releases fully at the end of March, 27th of March. Yeah, this looks... I'm interested in it, and the voice cast is pretty decent too, so cautiously optimistic that it'll be a decent game. Anyway, moving on. This is kind of a news for later in the month, but there will be a developer direct thing from Xbox at the end of January. It's the 25th, I think. Is there an actual date? 23rd, sorry. January 23rd of January, there'll be a developer direct. It'll be focusing mostly on Doom. Doom the Dark Ages, which is Doom 3 of the newest trilogy of stuff, but it's technically a prequel and some other kind of shenanigans. Anyway, we're going to be looking at mostly Doom, then a little bit of South of Midnight from Compulsion Games. You may recall this is the same developers behind We Happy Few. This is more of a action-adventure thing. It's set in... I'm gonna say New Orleans, but I'm not actually sure if it's New Orleans. But it's the South, I suppose. South of Midnight is the idea. The American Deep South. It actually maybe doesn't have a specific location. It's got a kind of stop motion art direction to it as well, which is kind of interesting. And it's difficult to get stop motion across on video games because of frame rate. And it sometimes just feels like the game is running slow instead of it's deliberately like that, but we'll see how it works out. And really interesting, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Really interested in this game, and it getting a shout out in a Xbox developer direct. It's kind of interesting because it's a third party game. It's not a first party entry, so it's either that Xbox are going to be pushing people to play it on Xbox, or maybe it's in Game Pass, something like that. Or Xbox don't have anything else to show and they needed a third game to put in. I don't know. There's other ways to look at it. There is a fourth game. This is kind of a thing they do in their developer directs, and that here's the 3 games we're going to be talking about, and then here's a fourth mystery thing that you'll have to tune in to find out what it is. Could be a few things. Fable is slated to be out this year at some stage. The next Gears of War also, I would imagine it's next year for that, but potentially it will be out this year as well. And we did have Rare, who are a Xbox first party people who haven't put out anything in a good while. They did come back at the end of last year to talk about Everwild and say, hey, maybe we'll see you in the new year. So maybe we'll get some news from that. But yeah, the fourth game is a mystery right now. We'll see. But they do have Clair Obscura down there, which is the third-party title, so it could be a third-party thing. Anyway, last thing in our updates, Turmoil is the free Epic game this week. You have until Thursday to grab it yourselves. It's a kind of a like oil digging simulator thing, but it's like done for laughs. It's like a comedy version of like the early or the late 19th century kind of oil digging thing. Yeah, I don't know. It's not really anything I'm interested in, but maybe it's something in your wheelhouse. Monthly games, it being second-ish week of January, we have Game Pass is getting a refresh. So coming to Game Pass this month is kind of a weird one. Diablo. Not Diablo 4, because that's already there. And not Diablo 3, because it should be there, but I don't think it is. Anyway, no, the original Diablo. Okay, it's fucking shareware at this point. Anybody can get it. Diablo Hellfire is free for everybody, and it is more or less the full game. Well, not quite, but anyway. Yeah, the original Diablo. We played it on the channel a while ago. It's still fun. It's a bit rough. It being a pretty old game, it's still very hard. But you can play it for even more for free now, the full game. UFC, sure, whatever. My time at Sandrock is a lifestyle sim thing, so Stardew Valley. I'm gonna keep comparing lifestyle sims to Stardew Valley, but it is kind of the gold standard at this point. The difference with Sandrock is that you are in a sort of more arid desert environment. My time at Porsche, the original game to this, or the preceding game to this, was almost a straight rip of Stardew Valley, but done in 3D instead of like 2D pixel art. My time at Sandrock is effectively the same game, but they've moved it to the desert instead. Rolling Hills is a bit restaurant sim, and there's it's a little bit of Overcooked to it, but I think it's mostly a restaurant sim, and more along the lines of like a sushi restaurant than anything else. Lightyear Frontier, I could have sworn was already in Game Pass, but apparently it's not. Lightyear Frontier is a game preview. It's still in early access on PC. Maybe it's the PC one that was in Game Pass, and now the console one is on. Anyway, Lightyear Frontier is Stardew Valley, but you're in a mech, more or less. And then Robin Hood, Sherwood Builders is... I don't know, actually. Builders makes it sound like it's a management sim. Join Robin Hood, 12th century England, free Nottingham, travel the regions, build up your hideout village. Yeah, it is kind of a base management thing, but you send people out on missions and that kind of thing. Okay. Anyway, that's Game Pass. Those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? Well, we actually do have non-joke things to put in the new releases section this time. So this is Cruel. This is a bit of a boomer shooter. I do like its art direction. It's going like very fast-paced. Almost got a little bit of mullet magic to it as well. There is some kind of like soda or soft drink mechanic where you drinking it makes you more powerful, or giving it to the dog unlocks some things or something like that. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but it is kind of like a mad dash between levels, and there is some element of roguelike-iness to it. But yeah, not knowing too much about it, but there's a dog in it, and it seems a bit tongue-in-cheek, so yeah, I don't know. It looks kind of interesting. Anyway, that's kind of the only new game coming out this week. The rest of them are kind of ports or remasters of older games. So this is Freedom Wars Remastered. Freedom Wars was originally a PS Vita title, exclusive to PS Vita. And so obviously since Sony stopped supporting it, you can't really play it anymore. But they have now made a remastered version. Bandai Namco. kind of gist of Freedom Wars is you are born into like death. You have a 1,000,000 year life sentence, and you have to like do work to work off your sentence, essentially. So the more missions you take on, and the more dangerous missions they are, and so on, you know, take more years off your sentence, kind of thing. It's got a lot of God Eater to it. I think I've seen a few previews of people talking about it and saying, "Oh yeah, it's kind of like lo-fi Monster Hunter kind of thing." It's like, I really think this is just God Eater. It's like futuristic God Eater, more or less. And God Eater was already kind of futuristic. I even think God Eater has the same premise of you have like a ridiculous life sentence. You have to do these things anyway. Gameplay wise, it's you and a bunch of friends fight giant monsters real time. Then there's anime shenanigans going on in the background. From what I read, the original game, it was pretty well received. There's like bite-sized missions for the PS Vita. It's how exactly that will play out on console. People are more expecting like longer missions, maybe. We'll see. We'll see how it works out for them. I'm interested though, because I liked God Eater, even if it was a ridiculous premise. East Memoir, The Oath in Felgana. God, that's a bit of a mouthful. Anyway, this is a remake of East 3. His name I forget. East 3 Wanderers from East. So it's a remake of that one, which I believe, I've never played the East series, but I believe that's one of the better ones. Coming to this remake is a new voice cast is what they called it. I don't know if the original game ever had a voice cast in the first place, so it could just be that the new thing is that it actually has voiced dialogue instead of it's a new cast of people. I don't know. There's also redone music. I think there's a new dungeon, but otherwise it is effectively East 3, but it looks nicer instead. Anyway, and the last of the ports or remasters and what have you, Body Biteland Overclocked is Astrobot. We have Astrobot at home, and this is Astrobot. Doing it a little bit of a disservice, sure, but it's a... Astrobot had how much money pumped into it and had the backing of Sony and so on. It's expected that that was supposed to be really well done. Body Biteland is, looking at it, you could dismiss it and go, it's just Astrobot. That's not a problem. Astrobot was good. And I want to see more colorful mascot platformers like we used to have. Crash Bandicoot, Super Mario before they went all 3D. Not that that was a problem, because Super Mario is still good, but those kind of not puzzly platformers, but like platforming challenges in like a colorful, I don't know how to describe it necessarily. I just want more Crash Bandicoot, I guess. Anyway, Body Biteland is already available on PC. It has been ported to PlayStation and Xbox. I think this is a PlayStation trailer, but I think it's on Xbox as well. Unfortunately, though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So this is a video put out by People Make Games. 100 slaps, the breaking news the game industry ignored in 2024. So this is kind of a report coming out of a couple of outsourcing studios that are based in Jakarta in Indonesia. And it's kind of a detailing interviews with people who worked there, and there's like elements of corporal punishment, financial blackmail, financial control, imprisonment in some cases. The kind of like the main focus is on one particular employee who became a little too close to one of the co-CEOs or the CEO's wife. I'm not sure if she ever had an official position in the company, and was taken in like kind of under your wing. We'll do a bit of mentoring, and it sounded like it was a good thing. It would help her career, and it basically devolved into slavery in some ways. And why does this affect the video game industry or the video game industry at large? Most of these outsourcing companies that are in Southeast Asia are doing asset work for big AAA companies. So they do asset works for things like cursed game Assassin's Creed Shadows, They've also worked on things like The Last of Us. They've worked on PUBG for art assets and like a bunch of really big games that you know and have played. This is how the video game industry kind of says, or at least North American parts of Europe can say that, hey, we don't make our people crunch, which is technically correct because these aren't employees. They're like contracted, outsourced studios. So while their employees aren't crunching, their contractors and outsourcers absolutely are. So it's detailing things like, 14-day weeks, which doesn't make sense, but like unbroken time at the office. There's parts where they are, during the COVID lockdowns, instead of them staying at home and working from home, they were brought into the office and they would live in the office instead. And the owners of the studio took that as an opportunity to just really dictate their lives and be like, here's when you get up, here's when you shower, here's when you eat, here's when you go to work, and so on. It's all really, really horrible shit. Corporal punishment kind of things is like physical slapping, punching, hitting kind of stuff. Like, it's pretty bad, and it doesn't exactly reflect well on the video game industry, who don't talk. Well, I mean, it doesn't. Like, you can see there, Ubisoft and a couple of other games. It doesn't necessarily reflect well on the video game industry. It also doesn't reflect particularly well on video game in journalism media, who like don't talk about this at all. It took. Like, I still don't think it's on any of the major... Like, Eurogamer does, but that's because Eurogamer and People Make Games have a bit of a history together. So, Chris Bratt, who's part of People Make Games, used to work for Eurogamer, so they do have a bit of a relationship there. But I don't think I've seen anyone else talking about it. Other parts of Gamer Network that Eurogamer's part of, I don't think I've said anything. It is a big deal in Jakarta, in Indonesia, in that area. Like, there's podcasts and stuff, people talking about it, getting the police involved. The police are now involved. That studio has also liquidated. Whether that's to avoid prosecution, I don't know. But that's the case where it's at. Anyway, it's a pretty lengthy video, but I do encourage you to give it a watch, even though it's pretty rough viewing. Anyway, we're going to move on from there. Okay, speaking of pretty bad things going on in labor, but not quite as bad as that, as no one's being fucking punched and slapped and having their salary held to ransom. Well, maybe their salary are being held to ransom here, I don't know. Anyway, Rocksteady cuts further jobs the end of 2024, so they already treated themselves to some layoffs in September, Warner Brothers, and then they thought, hey, let's go back for seconds, I guess, because they did it again in December. Another round of layoffs just before the close of 2024. This is a second round of job cuts in just 3 months. Disciplines hit our programming, artistry, QA teams. It's basically everybody in those. Management's not in there. Anyway, this is obviously coming on the heels of Suicide Squad just wrapping up its seasonal updates and stuff like that. The game is still going. I think a lot of outlets, possibly myself as well, I'm not really an outlet, but you know what I mean, possibly reporting that the game was shutting down entirely. It's not. The servers are staying up. It's just there won't be anything new coming to the game, outside of maybe bug fixes and stuff like that. So that's kind of what's happening here. The studio obviously won't be needing these people because they're not continuing to create things for the game. But it's, again, the wrong people losing their job. Like, they didn't do anything wrong. It's not like the game doesn't run well. It's not like the art isn't very good. It's not like QA are obviously perennially overworked anyway. They did their best with what was required of them. But they didn't make the decision to turn it into a live service looter shooter 12 years after that fad died out. Like, that's not their fault. Anyway, it was pointed out why Suicide Squad didn't do well. It fell short of Hogwarts Legacy, which is not a great barometer, really, for Warner Brothers. They're going to use it, of course, because it's one of their best performing games ever. But it's their best performing game ever, like, by a ridiculous margin. By, like, it's a fluke. Like, that's not going to happen again. And now they want every game to do that. Like, That's the kind of brain you're working against in AAA publishers. Anyway, frequent changes in vision, perfectionist leadership, and Rocksteady's lack of experience with multiplayer and live service games were all attributed to why Suicide Squad didn't do well. You'll note none of that has anything to do with these teams, but they're the ones that got let go. Anyway, we're not done with the layoffs. The layoffs will continue until morale improves. After years of silence, Transformers Reactivate Dev has confirmed what most of us had already feared: the game has been cancelled. So this is disappointing in a number of ways. Disappointing because the game looked like it was going to be kind of interesting. The trailer certainly made it look that way. And then disappointing in that it's more layoffs, because the team working on it are going to be let go as well. So the co-op action game, which was announced the end of 2022, is not going to be released. Development on the title has ceased, and some roles may be lost as a result of this downsizing. You can change that to will be lost. Announcement was made during the week after months of complete radio silence, so they haven't really been talking about it for a long time, which is usually the sign that either they've restarted development or they've just ceased working on it altogether, and that's the one it was. So in a statement, the decision did not come lightly. It is a difficult time for the studio and our people. We want to take a moment to thank the team who worked on Transformers for their dedication and passion. So Splash Damage, the developer, they do have other titles in the works, so this won't be their own thing. It's not shutting down the whole studio. They're just going to be focusing on something else instead. A beta was set to be played in 2023, but it never happened. They were promising to share more last year. Nothing happened. It's kind of the writing was on the wall at that point. But anyway, they do have other things they're working on. They'd like to work with Hasbro again, but that seems like more of corporate niceties. Then after that, some footage of the game did leak. The game in development. Now, do keep in mind, still very early in development. Even this footage was not like... This isn't like this week's build or anything. This is like a couple of months old, I think. Maybe even a year old at this point. But the idea they were going for was a kind of open sandbox map where you would obviously have to transform, you're a transformer, to get from point A to point B. You could actually fight while you're in the vehicles and so on. This, like the pink you're seeing is just placeholder stuff. They don't have the texture for it yet or whatever. But it looked like a pretty, interesting type co-op kind of game. You could certainly see it working with you and a bunch of pals driving around the map and taking on various missions and quests and what have you. Or the multiplayer aspect of a bit of a hide and seek kind of thing. You fighting each other across the big map. We didn't get a look at any of the Decepticons or anything like that, probably because they weren't ready. They just have Bumblebee. Whether you'd be able to make your own Transformer, it doesn't matter because the game's not coming out now, but it's disappointing. Because it looked like it could have been pretty good. Or at least decent, You could see, like, how well Helldivers was doing, or how well Space Marine 2 was doing with this kind of concept, like a pretty laid-back shooter. Not that Helldivers is laid back or anything, but you're gonna get my meaning. Anyway. Unfortunate, but that's where we're at. Anyway, moving on. We're still not done. Still not done with layoffs. Gyro Sparks pauses operations as leaders search for new publishing partners. So Gyro Sparks is a studio that was opened about 2022 by former Halo creatives. I think he was art director maybe for Halo. Former 343 Industries alum Jerry Hook. This was set up with NetEase. This is when NetEase was pushing for a bunch of veterans to open up all of their own studios, and now they're sort of pulling back on that. But anyway. So Gyro Sparks, an indie developer spun up in 2022, is pausing development on its debut project as it searches for funding. So they're not getting publishing partners, or they're not getting enough investment. Investment is seeing a downturn in video games. Started end of 2023 or so, and it's pushed all the way through 2024 and still hasn't really recovered this year. If you're searching for exceptional professionals who are driven and think outside the box, please reach out. We'd be more than happy to connect you with some of the best developers I have had the pleasure of working beside. So they're saying they're pausing operations and they're allowing their staff to take on other jobs. It's not clear if the staff is still technically employed by Jar of Sparks, and this is a like outsourcing thing, or they're not actually employed by Jar of Sparks anymore, and their whole, hey, yeah, we're allowing you to seek another job is because you're fired, or not fired, but let go, or the company doesn't exist anymore. Anyway, Jar of Sparks said it was a NetEase subsidiary. NetEase were going around a bunch of older veterans from Ubisoft, Riot Games, a lot of things to sort of, hey, why don't you, we'll help you set up your own company. That was 2022, 2023, when money was still kind of in the industry. But now they're looking to like downsize a lot of those studios. Uka Studios is probably on the way out. There are people behind the Visions of Mana, which is pretty good. Almost reboot of the Visions series. Then we had Worlds Unknown, which was last week. BioWare alum Mark Walters not able to get any investment on their game, so they've had to pause. Surgeon Studios, the people behind Tales of Kenzera, also looking for investment partners for their next game. We look forward to updating you all with our next step in our journey, but the next step is probably end of the company. Hopefully not. It's better to have more voices in the industry from smaller developers, not giant 100-people teams. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of giant 100-people teams, Assassin's Creed Shadows delayed again. Incredible. Now, ordinarily, news of a delay I would put in the update section, but it's in the industry bullshit section for a reason. And the reason is, it's been delayed because Ubisoft want to sell. And they feel that Assassin's Creed Shadows coming out at the beginning of another company taking over would be, attractive to a potential buyer. Anyway, Ubisoft has said it is delaying Assassin's Creed Shadow again as the company explores sale options. So the new release date's been moved. It's basically just been moved a month, 20th of March. It was going to be Valentine's Day, 14th February. It's been moved a little bit more than a month. It was originally supposed to come out in November last year. So it's already had significant delays. Anyway, it's currently taking decisive steps to review and pursue various transformational, strategic, and capitalistic options to extract the best value for stakeholders. That was English, apparently. I mean, the words were English. I'm not sure what language he was speaking. Anyway, you want to translate it, they want somebody to buy them. And more than likely it'll be Tencent, because Tencent already have major shareholder position with Ubisoft. We already had news that the Gimo family were talking with Tencent to buy them out, essentially, and then turn the company back over to the Gimo family, which is, no, maybe not, but that's what they wanted. We'll see if that's what actually happens. Reuters reported that Ubisoft was discussing buyout options with Chinese giant Tencent, who are already a major shareholder, and that would also take the company private. So largely, they just don't want to be beholden to shareholders anymore. Part of this reason is, you may be familiar with, Ubisoft's share price tanked dramatically, with X-Defiant, Cross-Defiant, and Star Wars Outlaws not performing well. The other issue is that their stock price was already massively inflated, due to a hostile takeover attempt from Vivendi. Due to the hostile takeover event, the share price kept going up and up and up and up and up. They kept pumping it up. Ubisoft did it deliberately, because they were, whatever way shares work, not entirely sure how it works, but they were getting Tencent to put money into Ubisoft to try to hold off Viacom getting a major position, enough of a position to just buy them outright. That resulted in the stock price going all the way up. Viacom eventually stopped trying, but the stock price never came down. And Ubisoft were kind of coasting on that for a good while until a downturn in the market, plus their game's not doing particularly well at the same time, kind of brought their stock price back to where it should have been if the hostile takeover hadn't happened. So right now, Ubisoft are where they're supposed to be, really. The problem is they've had a massive amount of investment in between that from shareholders and so on, and they want a return on that investment, and they're not really going to get it because the company was never really worth what they thought it was. So trying to get them out of the public market and back into a private market means they won't really have to deal with that problem. On the problem with that, though, is that means the company will have to get smaller. So layoffs. And that means a lot of Ubisoft's IPs, the ones that they've been sitting on for a long time, you're still not going to see anything from them. Things that have been a money sink for a while, Beyond Good and Evil 2, cough cough, probably going to get the cut as well, because they're not going to have that kind of money anymore. But we'll see what happens with them. Ubisoft expects to continue to drive significant cost reductions, that means layoffs, together with a highly selective approach to investments, that means cancelling projects. Anyway, we'll see how it goes after that. The rest of this article is mostly about talking that Ubisoft are not in a great position, which I was just telling you about, and how Assassin's Creed Shadows has to do really well. Like, it has to do amazing for Ubisoft, or they're in a lot of trouble. And that game is just cursed at this point, because it's not going to do that well. Like, it'll do fine. It'll probably do decent, even. Probably do good. It won't be enough. Anyway, moving on. Ex-Annapurna Interactive staff taking charge of Take-Two's private division label. So this is a kind of a weird one, and sort of good news, maybe? It's good news for the Annapurna people. It's not such great news for the private division people. Anyway, so this is kind of two stories coming together. So, Private Division, the indie game label from Take-Two, has been reportedly acquired by staff from last year's mass exodus at Annapurna Interactive. So we've kind of got two stories happening here. We have Private Division was shut down by Take-Two last year. This was after they had shut down Roll 7, which is the Rollerdrome, Ollie Ollie people. They did massive layoffs at Kerbal Space Program people, Intercept Games. Then they shut down Private Division, and then on top of that, Bloober Team and Yellow Brick Games both either decided to go with the self-publishing route or just dissolved their publishing deal with Private Division and went looking for a different publisher. So Private Division effectively as a publisher was not happening anymore. They were just going to finish off whatever deals they had in place, and then once they were done, that was the end of the label. On the Annapurna side of things, Annapurna Interactive, which are part of Annapurna, the film studio, they wanted to spin out into their own thing and not necessarily have the Annapurna name, kind of be their own thing, but still owned by Annapurna kind of thing. And there were talks for that. Yeah, okay, that sounds fine. The film studio isn't doing great at the moment, but the video game side is doing good. So if Annapurna is going to go down, at least you could save the video game side of things. And there was a deal for that to happen, and then somebody else came into the negotiations and fucked it all up. Fucked it all up so bad that all of the people on the video game side decided, fine, fuck off, we're gone. Despite attempted negotiations, 25-person interactive staff all just left. So, good job. Good job on that front. So they left. They were planning to set up their own thing anyway, as an offshoot from Annapurna, so now it's not going to be an offshoot anymore, it's just going to be wholly their own thing. And the first part of them being wholly their own thing is they are taking on Private Division's remaining deals and can potentially resurrect their old deals. We'll see. They are, however, being owned by a private equity firm, which is not a great sign, because it does mean money will come first. Money before, artistic integrity and what have you. So that part's not good. And the people who originally worked for Private Division, it's not clear if they're going to be brought back in. So they've likely still lost their jobs. Anyway. So as I said, it's good news for one side, it's not great news for the other side. Moving on. Speaking of studios getting shut down for no reason, BioShock creator expected Irrational Games to continue after his departure. He says he blames Take-Two for the closure. So this is an interview with Ken Levine out of Edge magazine, where they were mostly talking about Judas, which is his next game, allegedly supposed to come out some stage this year. But they did bring up the fact that, hey, why did you shut down Irrational Games, which are the BioShock developers, and it's why we haven't seen a BioShock 4 or a BioShock Infinite 2 or whatever we want to look at it, because that developer doesn't exist anymore. So BioShock creator Ken Levine wanted developer Irrational Games to continue and didn't expect the publisher Take-Two to shut it down. In 2014, more than 10 years ago now. Elansky was winding down the studio to focus on a different kind of game, meaning all but 15 Irrational employees were laid off. So at the time, it certainly seemed like it was his call, and possibly upper management wanted it to look like it was his call, to like throw him under the bus about it. But he says that the decision was made at more of a corporate level. So some quotes from the interview. The closure of Irrational was complicated. I felt out of my depth in the role. You're the creative person, and all of a sudden, as your vision increases, what you want to do, you have to become a manager in a way that you don't necessarily have any training or skill in. Which is the Peter principle kind of thing, where you're promoted just to the point where you're incompetent, and then you're not promoted any further. This is also why I'm reluctant to really go for any kind of managerial position. I'd rather stay a developer, senior developer, lead developer, principal developer. I don't really want to segue into management, but that tends to be the route for developers. You can only have so many senior developers on the team, whereas you never have enough managers. But anyway, my mental health was a mess during Infinite. I was stressed out. A lot of personal things were going on in my life. Both of my parents died. I just couldn't do it anymore, and I didn't think I had the team's confidence, which is all corroborated at the time, that Ken Levine was very difficult to work with on BioShock Infinite. He had been promoted to take over a huge team to make BioShock Infinite work, and his training would have been in, art, creative stuff. Not trained to be a manager and management, despite what other people and myself included might think of various management positions. It is a skill. It does have to be trained. You can't just promote someone who's never been trained in management and put them into management. That's where you get bad managers from. And again, also why I don't really want to segue, because I don't want to be a manager. Anyway, my intention was to go to the heads of Take-Two and say, hey, look, I just need to start a new thing. Irrational should continue without me. That's why I didn't maintain the name Irrational. The studio that he ostensibly kept is Ghost Story Games. Ghost Story. Anyway, I thought they would continue, but it wasn't my company. I had sold it. I worked for Take-Two, and the studio was theirs, not mine. So he was an employee. It wasn't his decision to keep it going, to shut it down or not shut it down. For his part, he thought they should. There's a quote in here saying that Irrational could have worked on the BioShock remaster instead. That would have given them a chance to put management in position, get a new creative team in position, and so on, and then they could work on the next BioShock once they had sorted all of that out. But for Ken's part, he felt, I don't think I was in any state to be a good leader for the team. Again, corroborated, he wasn't. The problem is, and you see this problem with big studios, what do you do with 300 people when you're going to have multiple years of R&D? You put out a smaller game. Not every game has to be a giant megabucks thing. But obviously try telling that to Take-Two, who are used to Grand Theft Auto money. He's like, can we make a smaller game that's probably not going to make as much money, but it will give our staff something to work on and keep their skills sharp while we do some R&D for a much, much bigger project? And they no. Anyway, that's what happened. He wanted to do a lot of R&D for what would eventually become Judas. You don't need 300 people to do that. And Take-Two obviously took the position of, well, if Ken Levine's not going to be there anymore, then we're just going to shut down the studio. And obviously they love seeing a way to cut costs, because that gives them kudos and bonuses in their pay packages. Anyway, speaking of studios that will likely be shut down because their lead creative has left, Platinum Games breaks silence, pledges to continue to create games that surprise. So this was part of an announcement that it's Bayonetta's 15th anniversary this year, and they want to do a big Bayonetta thing. Platinum's communications have been mostly muted ever since Hideki Kamiya left the studio at the end of last year. Sorry, not the end of last year, the end of the year before that even, he left, and Platinum have not really said anything about what they're working on or what they're doing, or is the studio even going to keep going now that he's gone? So this has been their first kind of public statement, really, since then. So Platinum have published a statement regarding the future of the company amid speculation that many of its lead creators could have followed Kamiya out of the company, and it is speculated that they did, in fact, do that. Metal Gear Rising director Kenji Saito, Astral Chain director Takehisa Tora, and Anarchy Reigns director Masaki Yamanaka all removed the PG thing from their social media handles last month, which suggests they're not working there anymore. Do we know that for definite? No, but it does suggest they're not working there anymore. We did have news that a former Platinum Games creative has joined Housemarque, like they're the Returnal, Resogun, Super Stardust people, with Sony, and they're working on their own thing. So we know at least one other creative has most definitely jumped ship. As how many others have done that as well, we don't know. Moving forward, we will continue to take on new challenges to create games that surprise and delight our fans. We look forward to your continued support of Bayonetta and Platinum Games. It's kind of all they have to say about it. And then the rest of the article is just talking about why Kamiya left Platinum in the first place. And he left because he wasn't happy there. He left because he was no longer in the creative role. He had become VP management again. Ken Levine, same thing. Shinji Mikami had the same idea at Tango Gameworks. And when he left Tango Gameworks, Microsoft went, well, he's not there anymore, so we're shutting the studio down. Is the same thing going to happen in Platinum? We don't know, because Platinum is not a subsidiary. You know, they're an independent studio. They work with a lot of bigger developers. You know, they work with Sega for the original Bayonetta, and then Nintendo for the next couple of Bayonettas. Nier Automata was with Square Enix. Metal Gear Rising was with Konami, and so on. So they do work for other bigger publishers in some ways. Konami might actually be an equivalent at this point. But they are a wholly owned company themselves. So whether they keep going or not, we don't know. But they have lost one of their draws to Hideki Kamiya. And then we know for definite they'd lost at least one creative, and then the social media updates, that could be nothing, but it could be that they've decided to leave as well. We don't know. We also don't really know what Platinum are working on right now, if they're working on anything. So moving on. Okay, so money, lots and lots of money. Why do games cost so much to make? Anyway, court docs revealed that Call of Duty games cost up to $700 million to develop. That is insane money, considering up until now it was assumed that the most expensive game to make was either GTA or the most recent Last of Us. And even then, that was somewhere around the 200 million mark, not 700 million. That's jumped quite a bit. Okay, so development costs for several Call of Duty titles were revealed during this lawsuit about a school shooter and something that we don't keep it somewhat light. We don't really want to get into. But it was revealed that Black Ops 3, the Modern Warfare remake, remaster, and Black Ops Cold War, the amounts that were set aside for those. So Treyarch developed Black Ops 3 over 3 years with a creative team of hundreds of people. That's really where all the money is going. And invested over $450 million in development costs over the game's lifecycle. So that just by itself is already double what was already assumed to have been the most expensive game. The Modern Warfare remake was $640 million from Infinity Ward. And then Black Ops Cold War was Treyarch and Raven working together, $700 million for that. So The Last of Us 2, Sony's premier single-player franchise, was revealed thanks to $220 million for that. At the time, this was seen as the industry's most significant game budget. That's not that long ago. Even, like, Black Ops 3, I don't think was even that long since... When the fuck did The Last of Us Part 2 come out? I don't know. It can't have been that much longer. Like, that's not inflation. Inflation isn't 200% here. 700 million. Okay. It's like, why do games cost that much? And there was actually like a couple of recent articles put out about that. And a lot of them are attributing it to just graphical fidelity. And while, yeah, that is a cost, certainly, trying to get, you know, super hyper realism into video games is certainly expensive, but that's not really where all of the cost comes from. Most of the cost comes from mismanagement. It comes from having people working on something for a long time and then scrapping their work. You know, you're paying for already the person's salary to work on that for ages. however many artists you had to pull in, developers you had to pull in, QA people you had to pull in, only for them to turn around and say, nah, do something else. That's a shit ton of money to waste. And they do that a lot. There's this concept called find the fun in video game development, which is really a holdover from much older games. But the idea would be that you would have a concept of a game, but you wouldn't really have the fine-tuned mechanics down yet. Or you'd want to find, I have this idea, I'm not sure if it'll actually make a good game, so let's try to make it and see if it feels good to play. And you would get the whole studio behind doing that. You'd nearly be in production making this game you're not even sure is actually fun. So you're going to find the fun by doing these iterations over and over. Bioshock Infinite was a big problem doing that. Also a reason why Ken Levine was not a great manager. Anyway, that kind of thing leads to a lot of wasted work. Whereas that kind of finding the fun thing should happen in a much smaller sandbox. Much, much smaller. An R&D with a very small amount of people. But some studios don't do that. Some studios just have the whole team whack on, go whole full production schedule for this thing they're not even sure they're going to put in the game at the end. That's where the waste is. That's where the ridiculous budgets come from. And when you have so many people working on the game, required to work on the game because there is so much going on, and you need to have it out almost every year. There needs to be a Call of Duty, despite them making less money every year. It's not in this article. I think it was in a separate article from Kotaku, but they were also tracking with how much it cost, which is in this article. But then how many sales they made of the game as well. And it's been trending down. The last 4 or 5 Call of Duties, every subsequent one has had fewer sales than the last, but they've cost more to make. Now, you could argue some of the fewer sales maybe because of Game Pass, but Call of Duty wasn't part of Game Pass until this year's one. So yeah, that's not sustainable, really. And do keep in mind, Activision have to make back the $69 billion that were spent on acquiring it. And Microsoft thinks it's going to be Call of Duty that does that, despite it selling less and less. Anyway, moving on. All right. That was a lot of shit happening in the video game industry. And this one is still also pretty shit, but it's at least a little bit better. It's a little bit more, hey, oh, you're actually human beings that work for us. We should actually look after you. So California, during the week, and currently still, is suffering from not exactly out of control wildfires, but I think they're somewhat under control now. But during the week, they were just, the Palisades thing. Absolute desolation. The pictures are incredible and just heartbreaking. Like, those houses gone, how many people are now homeless, hearing about how the insurances are treating them. Like, that's terrible. Then there was another article that Amazon was still having people making deliveries during the wildfires as well, having to drive nearby, close by it. What the fuck? Anyway, then there was news here that some LA studios, Riot Games in particular, is called out here, but they're not the only LA studio that are doing this. To basically say that don't come to work. Like, keep yourself fucking alive. Don't worry, you have a job. The work will still be there when you come back. Make sure you don't fucking die in the meantime. And that seems like quite a low bar, really, that this is something to be a feel-good thing, but it kind of is. The bar is in hell. Almost like LA right now. Anyway, they weren't the only ones. Naughty Dog also have a policy position in place. They're not currently at risk for the wildfires. Riot Games are in a position where they're pretty close to it. So they've basically said, yeah, don't don't come to the office. Naughty Dog are still far enough away that it's not a media concern, but close enough that it is still some concern. So they do have a position in place that, like, yeah, like, don't, you know, make sure you don't fucking die. You don't have to come to the office. You don't even have to work. Like, make sure you don't die. That's it. That's all you gotta do. Feels good. Love my capitalism. Anyway, last thing that is actually a better feel-good thing. So Stellar Blade, or Shift Up the studio, the end-of-year bonus to all of their developers, 300 of them, was a PS5 Pro and a cash bonus. So, like, good job. Good job on Stellar Blade. Here's your bonus. And here's a cool console so you can play the game that you worked so hard on. You can actually play it. You know? You don't have to go out and buy the machine to actually view your own work. Which is the thing. You definitely have developers working on these things who will never get to play the game themselves. Like, definitely the outsourced people in Indonesia are not going to be playing Assassin's Creed Shadows, even though they worked on it. Anyway, 300 employees at the studios were gifted a PS5 Pro, as well as 5 million won, which is around $3,500 US dollars. So that's pretty good. Some editorial here that, according to the representatives, the intention behind the bonuses was to encourage existing talent at the company. Considering how many layoffs took place last year, it's estimated to be more than 14,000. It's probably more than that now. To hear that a company actually wants to retain and even reward its staff is encouraging. Let's hope the staff's salaries are healthy enough with the bonuses too. Hopefully that is also the case. So pointing out that the intention was to try to, you know, retain staff. But I do think there's something to be said of, hey, enjoy the work you did. Here you go. Here's a machine that plays it at its best. Can you imagine working on a film for however many months it takes to work on or get a film made, and then just never... I can think of cases where you wouldn't want to watch it because it was a bad experience or whatever, and you have no interest in ever, you know, going near it again. But let's say it was something you did enjoy, you had a good time, or even just neutral, it was a job, but you never get to watch it. Not that you avoid watching it, you like are never capable of actually watching it. Or somehow you wrote a book but didn't get to read it. Obviously, that's not going to happen because you wrote the fucking thing. Working on music that you never get to hear. I'm not sure there even is like a similar example you could pull out. I think the closest thing is like working on a film or working on a TV show or so, and just never getting to watch it. I think there are actors who, like, the first time they see the film is in cinema. I'm not sure if that's on purpose. Maybe they just want to see the finished product. They don't want to see the edits and what have you. I would imagine the director has seen the film like 400 million times before it ever actually comes out. But how many, like the sound guy, like he's there watching it be filmed, sure. But he's not seeing like the edit and the special effects put on, and he's not there for every scene and so on. Anyway, my point is having, you know, not just giving the developers the game, like the CD or a code to download it or whatever, but giving them a machine that will run it too. Making sure they all have a machine that they can enjoy their work, the fruits of their labor. Anyway, I guess that's probably another thing as well. People working on like vineyards and what have you, making wine that costs thousands of dollars that they'll never get to drink it. You know, it is very much seize the means of productions, I guess, is what I'm going for there. Right. Anyway, we'll leave Cruel to run because it's the only actually new game, whereas the others are remasters or ports. Anyway, that was the news for the 6th to the 12th of January 2025. Some interesting games announcements, mostly PC things there. Obviously, it being early in the year, the bigger developers, the bigger publishers aren't really ready to talk about anything just yet. The Xbox Developer Direct might be interesting for Doom. Doom, South of Midnight, Clair Obscur, and whatever the fourth mystery game is. That will be interesting. So that's the 23rd of January. So it won't be next week. It'll be... might even be the week after. It might be the week after that as well. But we might know something about that. There has been a bunch of like leaks and then redacted leaks and a bunch of other things about whatever the Nintendo Switch 2 is. I think the latest thing is that there was a render put out by Genki on like this is what the Switch 2 is going to look like, and then Nintendo got in touch with them and then they said actually this is just guesswork, it's not what the Switch 2 will look like. So I don't know where to go with that. There have been a lot of leaks about the Switch 2. There's been other news that some games are going to be either ported to the Switch 2 or will be coming to the Switch 2 as well. There's some news that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or Final Fantasy VII Remake, I'm not sure, one of them, is going to be coming to Xbox, but also coming to Switch 2, which suggests that either the Switch 2 is pretty beefy processor and GPU chip-wise, or it's like the cloud version. We don't know. We still don't really know. A lot of like the higher fidelity AAA games, when they did come to Nintendo Switch, they were the cloud version. You streamed it. You know, it didn't actually run off the Switch. Maybe it's the same thing. We don't know. Anyway, new releases. I am interested in Freedom Wars. I'm gonna see if there's a demo of it first. Because while I did like God Eater, there were definitely parts of it that I didn't like. And if it's kind of more of the same, I'm not sure I'm up for it. Because I played God Eater until I platinumed it, and that's way more than anybody should ever play God Eater. So, and I may have burned out that part of my brain that gets enjoyment from that kind of thing. So I guess we'll find out. Anyway, we'll see if there's a demo for it, and if not, I'll just have to watch a stream and see if it really is more of the same. Industry bullshit. The People Make Games video is lengthy and a difficult watch, but I would encourage you to check it out because it's not just the video game industry that has this outsourcing cruelty problem. Obviously, you know, fashion industry, sweatshops, farming. Their, you know, the Hollywood industry has special effects studios coming out of Southeast Asia where they just crunch like crazy. It's extremely brutal. Fiverr, the thing itself, is very exploitative of people from Southeast Asia. And in general, almost every industry has this problem. That's not to dismiss it. Like, it is a problem. It is a very bad thing that should be stopped. Just to point out that it's not isolated to the video game industry, but I focus on video games, so that's why I'm bringing it up. But anyway, I encourage you to watch it. Lots of layoffs still continuing. This still is going to continue all the way through this year as well. I don't think there's going to be an upturn in investment anytime soon. It will probably take... We might see something with the Switch 2. If its specs are like decent enough, you might see a kind of return in more investment. But I think it'll probably take like a PlayStation 6 or whatever Xbox decides to call their next console, if they even make a new console, before you'll see anything like that. Anyway, and even that mightn't be enough. What else do we have in industry bullshit? Assassin's Creed getting delayed again so Ubisoft can sell themselves. Yeah, that game is cursed. It's also in the People Make Games video. Assassin's Creed Shadows is just a cursed game at this point. Anyway, that was the news for this week. What's happening on the channel? Nothing, really. Nothing's really happening on the channel. I was hoping to get back into like game streaming, because this is starting to feel more like a podcast than actually doing anything with video games. Why aren't you going full screen? Thank you. Anyway, in the meantime, off stream, I have now finished Sonic Frontiers, platinumed Sonic Frontiers. So I said last week that I wasn't sure if I was enjoying it. There were certain aspects to it that I just felt were frustrating. I'm not necessarily a Sonic game fan in general, and I did say that last week. I just find them kind of messy and frustrating to play. I'm kind of sick of missing a jump and it just fucks up the whole thing, or getting lost in their ridiculous mazes and stuff like that. And that is still present in Sonic Frontiers. There is definitely a you missed a jump, so get fucked kind of an element to it. I do get the appeal because when you nail a level, you hit every jump properly, hit every prompt correctly and so on, it does feel good. And the speed is, gotta go fast. It does feel good. It's when it feels bad, it just feels really shit. When it goes wrong, you flub a jump. Even more annoying is you didn't flub the jump, but the game decides to just, no, fuck you. It decides to just dump you in the water for no reason. It's really frustrating. And that is very much still present in Sonic Frontiers. The kind of little bite-size puzzles or running tracks or what have you that are dotted around the landscape, they don't really work great in the beginning. I do feel like the later areas are a lot better. Like, it feels like they kind of understood the assignment at that point, and like the earlier areas, not so much. The bespoke levels are good, like the custom levels that you go into. I say custom levels, like they're not like freeform. They're like the old Sonic games, the old 2D games or the Sonic Adventure style levels. Like, they're good. They're always good. I don't know. I'm very much mixed on the game, even though I platinumed it. I'm still kind of mixed on it. I don't know if I liked it or not. There are definitely parts I did like. There are definitely parts I didn't. Anyway, I think a lot of the frustration is that you have less control over Sonic than you'd like. And I do kind of feel that, I don't mean this as a pun, but Sonic works better when he's on rails. When you have less control. When it's just like, you press a button and you know exactly what it's going to do. And not casually drifting off the map because you were holding the analog stick the wrong way. It's very annoying. The game not deciding when a jump works, or how do I put it? There are parts of the games where holding forward will make Sonic run forward, and then there are parts of the game where holding forward will make Sonic run off the side of a track. And the game makes no distinction about which one is which. When do I hold forward? When do I not hold forward? Should I never touch the left analog stick? Like, what's going on? It almost would feel like Sonic should drive like a car more than anything else. Anyway, that's Sonic Frontiers. Moving on from that, I have started playing... Yeah, I don't know, something about the news... Something about current events made me really want to play Wolfenstein. I can't imagine what it was. Anyway, so I started playing Wolfenstein The New Order. We get to gameplay. Kind of gameplay? Anyway, I say started playing. I've actually finished it. I have more to do. I want to play it on a higher difficulty, and there's choices you make in the game that changes it somewhat, so I do want to see what those are about. I thought it was really good. Like, it is really good. There are problems. The pacing of the game, somewhat. But the set pieces are done really well. The last 2 levels effectively can just get in the bin. There's just a ridiculous difficulty spike in the last couple of levels that makes it a bit of a chore and makes me feel like maybe I don't want to play it on a higher difficulty, because thinking about those last couple of levels is like, nah, I'm good. I don't want to do that at a higher difficulty, thanks. But the set pieces are done well. The story is bonkers, but good. If anything, I would probably want more weapon variety, because you are essentially just looking down an assault rifle for pretty much the whole game. But the stealth options were fun as well, and I think my issue with the last couple of levels is that there is no real stealth option at that point. And the last boss is bullshit. But otherwise, yeah, it's a fun game. I'm going to continue playing it with the opposite choices and see how that works out, and then I might continue the series. I might leave it to stream it instead. I don't know yet, but I'm thinking about it. Anyway, that's what I'm doing. I guess I need a new game for next week too. Anyway. Did I leave that to loop? I don't want to see that looping, because there's a bunch of Nazi imagery at the beginning. Nope, that's not what that does. The fuck is that screen? How do I go backwards? Oh, whoops. I don't know where I've gone now. Okay, alright, we'll stick with Sonic. Sonic doesn't have Nazi imagery. Yes. Okay, anyway. That's the news and channel-ish update for 6th to the 12th of January 2025. Next week, again, hopefully getting into full game streams again. It was my first week back to work. It was a bit exhausting, and I still have a bit of anxiety going back to streaming, so working on it. Hopefully you'll see me before the next weekly news recap on the channel. Hollow Body is what we're trying to get back to. I might instead just do like some one-shots to get back into it instead. I'm debating with myself whether or not to do that. There's a bunch of games I have set aside to play for Foley Plays Games a Bit. It's the series where I just play the game once just to see what it's like, rather than doing a full Let's Play of it. So I do have like quite a few of those set aside, so I might just dip into that list and do a few of those instead. I don't know. I haven't decided yet, because I do want to finish Hollow Body as well. Anyway, I'm going to head off. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully I will see you before the next week's news recap. But if I don't, I'll see you then. Bye.